Good evening and welcome to the final night of Halloween Week 2019, where I am joined by the spooky Liv Westring. Good evening.
Hello.
Hello, hello. And I suppose you may be wondering why I've invited you this evening, and the reason is that I want to show you a very special part of a very special game called Conarium. It's a Lovecraftian horror type game, loosely based on elements of At the Mountains of Madness, but also actually with elements that strongly draw on this year's Halloween story, The Nameless City, and it is just delicious. So are you up for some Lovecraftian archaeology?
Always.
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 Excellent, excellent. Now, first of all, as we look around, we've just arrived in an underwater city, a place which is or was occupied by ancient beings, the old ones, as they're known in the Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos, and crucially, this space here reminds me very much of the sort of geological formations that you see, well, not the rings, obviously, but these bits that you see in places like the Giant's Causeway. They're wonderful sort of basalt structures, and I guess I mean, you're an archaeologist. You've just been plonked here. You've broken up in a pool of your own blood. What's your first thought, do you think?
Given that scenario, besides freaking out, I would probably be real curious about the round portal gateways.
Yeah.
And the lit lights.
Well, do you know, this is the perennial problem, isn't it? This is the thing that we always come back to: is who on earth is lighting these spaces, given that they're meant to be, in this instance, meant to have been unoccupied by any living being for millions of years, not even millennia.
But are you the only one down there at the moment?
Oh, no, that's a good point. Yes, sorry, I should say yes. My research team is lost somewhere down here, and I am trying to find them. I, as a character called Frank Gilman. And also, it's easy to miss, and this is something I quite like, but we have all around us carved elements as well, such as these I don't know, inhuman creatures. And this is something that obviously Lovecraft is a bit infamous for, is saying essentially it was indescribable, and leaving you to sort of imagine what it is that he's imagining. And arguably, that's one of the reasons why his horror is relatively timeless. It's not anchored to the Gothic tropes, for example, of horror of writers before him. It's still going quite strong because it's always talking about what's on the horizon. So back then it was Antarctic exploration. Now you could apply Cthulhu and Lovecraftian horror to all manner of innovations. But I like the way that they've attempted to realise this indescribable, because I'm not sure exactly how I would describe that. It looks vaguely like a face with arms, maybe. Do you think?
I would describe it as humanoid with maybe some kind of insectoid / squid-like.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, so those could be mandibles then. Possibly.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay.
Head.
Okay. And I think I've forgotten. Can I jump in this game? No, I can't jump. Okay, but if I think that might be a lamp, actually.
Yeah.
I think you might be able to put something inside the head, or is the head flat? Not sure. It doesn't matter. But anyway, we are in a mysterious and bizarre place, and something that always intrigues me about the way that, especially Lovecraft, talks about archaeology is he'll talk about, for example, non-Euclidean geometry, and I think what he's getting at is stuff that diverges from conventional architectural norms. So things like key-shaped doorways, this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what
I
what
think that like I think also what I draw from that is a lot of like architecture that messes with your perception of where you are in the space,
yeah, uh-huh. Oh well,
making
it's
it
almost
hard.
like a like those draw. I forgot what the artist's name is now. The drawings where gravity seemingly doesn't apply and
Mm-hmm.
spaces fold in and out of themselves. Yeah, I see. I see. So in that sense, you're a little bit more charitable then to that than I am. I just sort of take it as he doesn't really know what he's talking about. you know. But okay, I like that you're a little bit more charitable on that than I am. Look, I mean, look at this material here. It's like someone's
Mm-hmm.
formed rock to look a little bit like a series of winkles or something.
Yeah.
Um, but having that as a structure, as an architectural, deliberately formed element is fascinating. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
suppose. Um, Actually, I suppose a literal equivalent would be something like a pillar in, say, Greek architecture. You know, they were
Yeah.
based on natural formations like trees, straight lines that they could observe in the real world. So, who's to say that if you're a million-year-old, was it antediluvian people,
Mm-hmm.
that you wouldn't sort of go, oh, look at those winkles, let's put those onto architecture. Yeah,
That's cute.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, that's cute. Yeah, like an IKEA version of a pre-human species. Oh, looks like we're hearing from our research crew.
To other expedition
That
parties,
doesn't sound very
is there anyone who can read me?
promising.
No.
One person is dead, and 2 others have been injured by the partial ice cave collapse. There is something here with us.
Oh no.
No.
Do not come through our expedition
Expedition
route.
route.
I repeat, do not come through our expedition route.
Yes, I read you. This is Frank. For God's sake, what happened? And please, tell me where I can find you.
Frank, do not stray from your path. We have come across something terrible.
He's saying don't stray from the path, but also don't come via our
Do not
route.
come here through our
I don't understand.
expedition route, no matter what happens. It looks like this
Fiendish
netherworld
netherworld.
depends on some kind of energy. An energy that is stored in curious stoneworks similar to an obelisk with crystals on top. And they are able to clear away some of the strange plants.
Dr. Faust? Dr. Faust?
Now, obviously,
Oh, come on, not again.
I don't know about
This is
you.
nonsense. I cannot understand what is going on.
I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I'd rush to join a research team who was headed up by a Dr. Faust.
No, no, I'd hesitate, but you know, work can be scarce.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I can imagine I'd be like, so
No poodle, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Precisely. So it's also worthwhile saying it's unclear as to whether or not you've been here before. So we're about to see a hallucination, which is a replaying of them discovering this room.
As I predicted, a race, reptilian in physiology, lived inside these ruins after the original builders. The Elder Things left the area after some unknown cataclysmic event, now lost in an archaic and lost chapter of Earth's history. This relief depicts some reptilian creatures
over here.
treating an Elder Thing with reverence.
Yes.
And the other relief with 4 tall figures, I believe symbolizes empty vessels. Oh, golems. We've seen the same vessel figures depicted as assuming different roles several times in most of the murals or reliefs we've come across so far.
Now I have to say, you are to a certain extent, you're slightly at a disadvantage because you can't actually hear the game, can you? You can just hear
Yeah.
me talking. Obviously, the viewers can hear the game, and I can. And so at the moment, we can hear the wind howling, but also we can hear what is an utterly god-awful attempt at a pseudo-British accent by these different voice actors. And I think it makes me wonder what was uh, the sort of New England Providence kind of accent at the time. It seems that most people when they're trying to do like a Lovecraft impression on documentaries, they sort of talk in that weird, affected pseudo-British way. But there's something very wrong about the way that these guys talk. It's breathless. It's got the vowels all wrong, and they say words like route instead of route. I find it a little bit off-putting, but then again, I suppose it's one of those things where you can't. I also can, I guess, sort of imagine that's just how these guys sound. But do you think that there are subtleties? Yeah, that there are worse subtleties to that computer games commit. So, for example, I mean, how does Skyrim, for example, match up to a quote-unquote Nordic accent?
I mean, did they try?
Yeah. That's fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, it's.
But I mean, I suspect it's the same kind of reaction that I have every time I hear someone who's supposed to be Nordic speaking a Russian accent on TV.
Oh, okay.
Where you're like, I don't think our accent's like that. I don't know, because I don't hear my own accent.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it sounds.
But also
Russians.
you're also not Swedish chef either.
No, I'm not.
Flingy fluggy, yeah, exactly. Speaking of Sweden, though, I've always imagined that these things would be. This is your Cthulhu IKEA designer. I can imagine them designing this as a flat pack. Any aspiring cultist needs this in their flat. Speaking of which, what do you make of this as a cultic site?
I think it's efficient.
Well, it's also strangely not symmetrical, though. If you look at that, like at the line. Let's see. I think we're in the middle here. You either go up the middle and everything's slightly to the right, or you're in line with the altar and the statue beyond, and everything's not quite right. I mean, maybe that is what they're trying to do in terms of invoking this non-Euclidean. The proportions weren't quite right. All this sort of thing. Maybe it's surprisingly good game design. Yeah, who knows? Maybe. And here, opposite the mirror, opposite the altar, we have a mirror.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that's us. Well, that's
Handsome.
you and I. Yeah, well, exactly. Yes, that's more or less what I see every morning when I wake up. Chiseled jaw, and then I stick on a beard and
stern look. Though I guess I wouldn't be smiling in this situation either.
No. Well, that sort of brings me to something in so much as how do you think you would be? I mean, obviously, I'm not saying you can imagine waking up in an Antarctic base with amnesia and trying to find people in a subterranean netherworld. But if you came across a culture that, because as we have been doing in the Skyrim surveys, we've been looking at the way that people treat the spaces that interact between natural spaces and architectural spaces in the context of tombs, but this is meant to be something that's completely not human. I mean, how is that something that would you be excited to find that if you were an archaeologist? Who have the opportunity?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be very hard to interpret because you can always only interpret shit based on your own understanding. So trying to understand something that's not human and that's might be like the whole point of it is that you cannot understand it would be rough. But yeah, I would be stoked. It would be a great like it would be the biggest archaeological like achievement ever.
So what you're saying is then you wouldn't do what Yvonne Daniken's etc. accuse archaeologists of doing and hide it from the world.
No, no,
No.
I would probably live stream me screaming in excitement.
Exactly. I just find that astonishing. The idea that
Looks like something's missing here.
that people accuse essentially scientists of when they find something new of wanting to hide it or having some sort of I don't know. The thing is, in that sense, if I was a member of a or if I was approached to be a member of a secret society, first thing I'd want to know is, are you going to pay me enough not to talk about this?
Yeah.
Because it's frankly, archaeologists aren't paid enough.
No.
I think.
Also, I would counter argue everything they put up to me with, okay, do you know how much I would get paid for like just the media coverage of this?
Exactly, or how much a single artifact would go for, for example, on eBay, So I think, the idea that archaeologists don't or wouldn't be shouting from the rooftops about this stuff is laughable. But nonetheless, it is something we have to live with. What's the strangest that sort of accusation you've heard along those lines? Have you ever come across anything really weird where someone thinks that archaeologists are hiding something in particular?
It's the standard Illuminati stuff where you're like, no, people are like, you're afraid that people would find out, and like the big capitalist machine doesn't want us to have all the fancy alien technology that would jump us into like Star Trek territory. And I'm like, what? Like, most archaeologists don't get funded by oil companies.
Well, exactly. But also, I mean, in that sense, most archaeologists
Don't get funded at all.
don't get funded at all. But also, they for example, I mean, probably the weirdest one I've ever heard is that there's a race of giants that archaeologists are hiding from the world.
Okay.
And apparently, I haven't looked into it too much, but apparently it's something vaguely biblical, or possibly something, an element of the Quran, a book, where the idea is that giant sort of angelic creatures lived amongst humans at the beginning of time for a while, and I just find it weird. If I found a giant, I'd be telling the world about it. But one thing I wouldn't do, though, is just break archaeological context like this.
No. I would document it first anyway. Then I would probably want to document what's inside of there, so maybe. But he seems a bit reckless.
He does, doesn't he? So many archaeologists in popular culture are a bit reckless. Oh, it's like a mini version of the things we've already seen.
Yes.
Oh, that's quite cute,
It
actually.
reminds me of a mind flayer from D&D.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's something else as well, actually. The idea that D&D is demonic. I find that hilarious. Read description.
Get that?
An ornamental object with metallic part engraved within a sandstone rock, depicting an elder thing figure in the center. And this is something that I do praise Lovecraft's writing for, is that he does have, in some ways, an archaeologist's curiosity. He does talk about proportions and foundations and things, for example, in the Nameless City story, but also he's sensitive to the use of space for example, cultic purposes or rituals that he doesn't quite understand, or that he obviously doesn't want to understand. But I suppose that's one of the things that, again, finding myself in a space like this, I kind of think, but that's the difference, is that I wouldn't be content just to have been here. I'd want to record it, I'd want to understand it, I'd want to discuss it with others.
I would be running back for my GI or Geological Information System, GIS, just to document it all.
Precisely.
I mean, imagine being able to do a 3D scan of this place.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then turn up and blow some professors' minds because
Yeah.
it's also interesting because the other day I was having a conversation, as I often do, with people about the nature of science and pseudoscience, and this is one of a recent video, and someone suggested that Max Planck once said that science progresses one funeral at a time, i.e. people are so afraid of annoying someone else's ego that the progress isn't made until the consensus is eradicated. And I can sort of understand where people are coming from on that presumption, but from what my experience is, it's actually quite a brutal world in terms of criticism of your work. You know. Speaking of which, these plants are amazing, aren't they?
I know, I want them. So pretty.
Do you think how far would you get in terms of hanging these up for Halloween? Do you think?
I would. I mean, look at them. They're all lights, pretty lights. I'd have them all year round.
They're beautiful. Oh. You can see lizard people. So here again we have sort of undescribable or unjustifiable things going on. For example, this technology, I'm not quite sure what it is, but it's recharging little pod. These beautiful sort of golden, sinuous patterns on the dark rock. Again, all very reminiscent of the Nameless City. But this is actually, funnily enough, do you have any sense of when this game is set?
I would see. You had a walkie-talkie, right? So 60s.
Well, you know what? I would have thought the 1960s based on the walkie-talkie and the shape of it, but it's 1947 in the game, and so it feels a bit, in that sense, it feels a little bit anachronistic in some places. But as you were saying, this idea of architecture being misleading in places. I love the way that the floor mirrors the ceiling.
Yeah.
You have these sort of invitations to walk along a curved surface. But mixed in with the familiar. I love the lamps and the shadows that they cast.
They are so pretty.
Another hallucination.
The same set of symbols we've seen in strangely carved niches all around here.
See, niches as well.
Niches with what
British
is
people don't say
written in
niche, they
oldest
say
parchment.
niche.
I believe uncertainly
I'm so
that
sorry
they
you're
represent
getting
a
so offended.
destination towards somewhere significant.
Now this space here, I have to say, this is one of the most obscure places in the whole game. And I spent hours searching, looking for
stone is illegible.
the right symbol, the right
There's no glyph on
stone,
this stone.
getting that same message over and over again. And apparently you had to go to this one here and look at that there.
This symbol is exactly the same with the one I saw in the vision about
Like
repetition
hours
of
ago you
specific
saw this,
symbols
apparently.
within the caverns below
Okay.
the base.
Yeah.
Good thing he has a good memory.
I had to go and look at a walkthrough. It was driving me crazy. I was like, I know this space is about something. Although the bell, I loved the bells. I wonder what they would be ringing for.
If it's ritual or security.
Well, exactly. Yeah, indeed.
That's not unsettling at all.
Oh, these guys? No,
Yeah.
not at all. No, it's fine. Well, and that's the thing. Obviously, this is one of the. This isn't as serious an exploration as our Skyrim surveys, but I guess it does raise quite an important question, and that is: have you ever been scared or unnerved by an archaeological site?
No.
No, me neither. Me neither. Um,
I've been unsettled and unnerved by people I've met on archaeological sites. But
no, we didn't meet on an archaeological site, so that's fine.
yeah.
But I see. Just strange people, members of the public, or fellow archaeologists, or you don't want to incriminate yourself.
Oh, I'm not gonna. No names.
No names. Oddballs.
But there are plenty that show up on an archaeological excavation that has interesting and controversial views on what has happened throughout history.
Okay. Well, would they, for example, maybe say something like Incan burials are replicating burials from millions of years ago?
Mm-hmm.
This, again, it's a delicious little archaeological reference. A feathered mask I took from the head of one of the skeletons sitting silently in their eternal resting places. Signs of colour that can be seen on the now solidified feathers make me think how flamboyant it might once have been. I suppose there's an inescapable exoticism, or esotericism, if that's a word, to lots of writings from this period. Obviously, Lovecraft wasn't the only person writing about the Middle East, the Far East, etc., and imagining what was going on beyond the deserts and all this sort of stuff. And I mean, arguably, for example, Indiana Jones comes from the same thread in terms of
Absolutely.
its use of archaeology. But again, you come back to this notion that actually I've never been in an archaeological space and been scared of booby traps, for example, or concerned about. Well, actually, what do you make of this?
That's a sarcophagi.
It is, yeah. They're sarcophagi, yeah, with sort of plexiglass or crystalline covers. So this is something that's mentioned in the Nameless City. It's an intriguing burial rite, though. So presumably mummified, you have a death mask, and then why have a transparent lid, do you think?
I mean, viewing the dead, I would imagine.
Oh, viewing the dead. I see.
Yeah.
So do you think you want to see? Do you think it's for confirmation of that the mummification is working, or do you actually want to see them decompose? What do you reckon?
I would need to know if they're actually, like, how they're processing the bodies to answer that. I mean, if the body is prepped for rotting, then I would assume that it has something to do with that. If they're being properly mummified, then I would imagine that it is for some kind of permanent viewing of the dead.
Okay.
And their now permanent mummified form.
Well, maybe we might just see a little bit more about this process in a moment. But actually, yes, I suppose, yeah. If they were being put in there with yogurt, for example, then they would be for rotting, not for preservation. But here is a mummified or a pre-mummified corpse. Oh.
From some of the bas-reliefs explored in the seemingly oldest structure, which had been weathered into shapeless ruins ages ago, we learned that these reptilian creatures were the inhabitants of this eon-dead city. But while some of them were enshrouded in special coffins, these are standing still, glued to their vertical rock coffins with an awful-looking ooze. Curiously, they were firmly placed in the niches on some of the walls.
Yeah, the oozing goop.
Yeah.
I'm also not a fan of the way that they say coffin. They say coffin, niche. I'm very, very frustrated by this. But again, I guess it's one of those things that that you have to know how they should sound to be too offended by it. I love the dripping ooze though. It's just blech. Well, actually, speaking of yogurt, yeah.
Yeah.
Now then, we want to go through there, so that means I probably need to recharge my little stone. Nope, I need my stone. There you are. Oh, actually, no. What we need to do. Oh, here's a bit of a treat. Charge. Yeah. So is this sort of game your bag in so much as it's not it's not as action packed, for example, as Skyrim is, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed. I mean, I don't really have the patience for complicated puzzles anymore. But I do enjoy this kind of mystery and like going around looking for things and uncovering the truth.
Well, I suppose as an archaeologist, you need to make a decision between fact and truth, according to Indiana Jones. Or if you're after truth, then the philosophy class is right down the hall. So here we are. This is another structure that I deliberately didn't bring us into because we weren't ready yet. But this is an antediluvian. Well, what do you think it might be for?
I mean, it looks like some kind of clockwork mechanism. So I
Clockwork
imagine it
mechanism,
charges something and releases some kind of energy.
Okay. Let's test that notion. Let's go over here. Push the lever, which is so reminiscent of the Dwemer in Skyrim. It's just incredibly reminiscent. Now we need to put on a happy face. No, we need to put on this thing here. Hang on, I want to grab it. There we go. And now, return the lever. Now this is something that I find interesting, is that in this game there's a weird combination of metallic technology and geological technology. And I sometimes wonder whether that's actually incompatible. But we'll come back to that in a moment. So the ceiling is closed, and we have an observatory. Ooh.
That's pretty.
It's quite nice, isn't it?
And a glyph.
Yeah, a glyph. And a weird
A network of blue lines and dots appeared out of nowhere, resembling some sort of a star map. But why does that dot glow in a different color than the others?
That's unsettling.
It is, yeah. I sort of wonder whether that dot is the location of Azathoth or something. Or, well, no, Cthulhu wouldn't be out in space. He's under the water.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've drawn the glyph. Needed the glyph to proceed, and off we go. Ta-da! Oh, look, fossil. Now here's a question that I'm curious about. How on earth did they have a fossil of a creature that was alive when they built this place?
Well, maybe they made the fossil.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Oh, wow. That's like next level ancient aliens theories. Maybe all fossils have been made by a pre-human civilization. Yeah, to decorate their walls, trinkets and things. Yeah, okay. And then they hid some of them in rocks just to mess with people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe that's the bad fossils.
Well.
They're like, this is not worth picking out, just leave it. Make a new one, make a better one.
It's the only thing that makes sense. Now, actually, I'm intrigued by the question of whether or not these plants were put in place deliberately or not. Because clearly, when the stone is here to be charged to clear them, and in front of the gateway we do have these reptilian priest-like creatures, sort of almost like sentinels. So I'm inclined to think, also given the carving here of plants, that actually it is deliberate, that it sort of prevents access into the area. But Ah, there we go. So, now we go onward. No time to record anything or take photographs.
Nope.
No,
We're doing important rescue business.
indeed.
Do we even, or are we doing rescue business? That's a good question too. Or are we like, ooh,
Yeah.
Spectre?
I think we are doing rescue business. You could also say we're doing early to mid 20th century science. Charge. Okay, and on we go. You may be wondering what that was. I think it is a hallucination. I don't think there actually are ghosts down here, but it's unclear.
As many things are.
And, oh no, not again! Oh. For example,
Oh God, what was that all about? A vision, perhaps? I think somehow it has something to do with the intense headaches.
Is this the thing changed, right?
the thing did change. So it was
Blood?
it was there. Now it sort of charged towards me. It did have one of those feathered headdresses on as well. And now I think this is its
It's
skeleton. I know it sort of looks a bit human, but the other skeleton looked human as well. Well, maybe this isn't its
But
skeleton.
that's
No, not that human. No. So could that be my skeleton?
maybe.
Have they swapped bones with me, or with us as the protagonist?
Let's not think about that. And
No. Oh, need to charge my pod again.
yep.
See, this is the thing about even ancient, truly ancient, highly advanced civilizations. They couldn't crack the battery.
Nope.
No, they're lucky if they get a half a day out of their glowy pod. Seriously, every year I update my glowy pod, and the battery life never gets any better.
It's a conspiracy. They're making the batteries not last, so you're gonna buy a new one.
Yeah, that's what it is. The glowy, I wonder who the Steve Jobs of this glowy pod industry would be. Oh, not more ancient elder things, symbols. Although it is quite convenient. I mean, this is basically wireless charging.
Yeah.
Just imagine if that happened everywhere you went. That'd be cool. Oh, another crack in the floor. Now we are in Antarctica in this game. We're just underground, and more plants with the glowy berries.
Please move.
So pretty. Now here we come to. So we've had mechanical mechanisms. Duh. But here we come to a mechanism that is part mechanical, part goop, and part sort of geology clockwork. And so if we have to draw the rune that we had cast onto the wall of the observatory. Oh no, so it's down, I think, up, and then yeah. And now this whole thing is like an elevator that again falls into those tropes of ancient civilizations that have this sort of stone clockwork, big movable block type thing going on. And I wonder, do you think? I'm sorry, it's a long-standing thought of mine or query as to whether or not people are ever going to get bored of portraying stone rooms moving like this. What do you think?
I mean, I think not. I mean, stone moving is a very powerful thing because rock is so solid. Like, we have tales of like shifting mountains and all of that spanning like most folklore that I know of.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. And I suppose, I mean, in previous conversations about this, you've mentioned things like dwarves, for example,
Yeah.
and the use of. I mean, an obvious example, an extension of this would be in Lord of the Rings, where Gimli knows where a door is in a mountain, and I understand that it's powerful, but I suppose it's just the fact that it's so fictitious. Again, I've never been in a space where there's a stone door that literally sort of cogs out of the way for you. Do you know what I mean? It's I guess it's tropey, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah. I like that trope.
Okay, yeah. Which is, yeah. I mean, again, why am I criticising a Cthulhu archaeology game on that stance? Of course, it's going to be a wee bit tropey. But I wonder whether there's scope for other interesting new tropes. I'm not really sure how I would go about designing them. But Lara Croft, Indiana Jones, this game, Skyrim, they all have these sort of this stone block clockwork tendency, and yet that's not something we ever see in the real world. Oh, I really quite like the here we get all these sort of flashes again of the familiar. So for example, the Nameless City, there's lots of talk about the city being on the outskirts of the deserts of Araby, and the floors, the slightly sort of almost church window-like elements there. I like the fact that in places it does feel familiar, but then in other places it's just disturbingly weird and wrong and different. I mean, is there anything that you would have done possibly to make these spaces a bit odder, or?
I think I would have put in more like strange angles.
Because it's very regular, isn't it?
It is. And just maybe putting like, if we look down the corridor,
And here?
like having it slightly like shift, so
Okay.
you can't really see, like it's skewed
Yeah.
by its own architecture.
I see. Yeah. So, well, and also, do you mean, and as you walk along it, you move with the architecture almost? So your sense of gravity and up and down changes and this kind of thing. Yeah, I can understand that. Although these things are cool. So here we have sarcophagi that do not have transparent fronts to them. Interestingly, a little bit of flooding has happened, so we have to call in a plumber or something.
I imagine that isn't good for preservation.
No, exactly. No. Although, are these just the lids though? They don't seem to have any backs on them. Could just be lids. Maybe this is like a storage corridor. If that makes any sense. But anyway, along here, let's see. We've got. This is pretty cool. Should turn my torch on again.
Smash.
Smashy. No drawing. No recording. This is basically how I was taught to dig. That's why Durham's one of the best departments in the country, if not the world. We axe our way through.
Ooh.
Yeah, we found a secret. Now this space I find interesting. This to me almost feels as though it's symbolic. Well, again, presuming it's always been flooded, I guess. But maybe you soak something in there. Maybe you're sort of, I don't know, baptized or something. You rise up out of the waters, and here we have more people or more people in goop. And let's see, somewhere here there is a death mask waiting. It's the goop, though. I wonder what the goop is, what it does.
Yeah.
Makes me think of Alien Covenant. There we go. So it's quite pretty. I would wear that.
It is.
I like the iridescent nature of it. And
It's very frog-like.
it is, isn't it? It's a bit innsmouthy, dare we say? A beautifully ornate metal mask with a reptilian face carved on it. It does not indicate anything about the purpose it served in its day. Well, I don't know, because as we have observed very similar masks on the mummy, so I reckon it's a death mask, or something like that. I think personally, I would have, to answer my own question, rather than just keep on asking you questions so cruelly, I think I probably would have gone down this sort of squiggly wiggly route a bit more with the architecture. So maybe take, like a H.R. Geiger kind of influence, or Giger. But then again, he gets a bit phallic at times.
He does, most of the time.
It can be a bit disturbing. Now here we have, so we have our death mask in place on a mummy, and it's about to be dropped into some sort of liquid. So I reckon this is an argument for preservation practices.
Yeah.
But again, that's what the question is: what does the liquid do? It could be that it's
maybe it's resin.
It could be like resin. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they could be sort of preserving these people like the collectibles.
Vinyl.
Yeah. Have you come across any cool vinyl figures recently? No.
Not really.
Not as cool as this guy.
No. Look at that stance. He means business.
He does. So you were saying?
I was just saying that I haven't. No. I wasn't going anywhere in particular.
Oh, okay. With that. Fair enough. Against this snake-like pillars, it's all. Oh, I need to charge my pod again.
No.
I tell you, it's a conspiracy. Find a charge point that's not turned on yet. Ugh. This is precisely why we haven't got electric cars yet. Need to charge me. This way. Oh, speaking of which, as well, if I saw luminescent mushrooms, I'm not sure I'd just tread in them either.
No, I'd be careful. I would have intense feelings of
it's not working.
Risking radiation poisoning or something else. I'd probably make an incident report and ask someone to check them out before I continued further.
Yeah. Do you know? I've heard absolute horror stories where, because obviously archaeologists aren't very well paid, where they've been exposed to hazardous materials, and instead of actually getting someone in to deal with the materials, they are basically given an upfront lump sum of a fairly negligible amount of like £3,000 or £4,000, just to continue digging on the site and essentially put their lives at risk for a later date. I find that to be a little bit annoying.
Yeah. I mean, we had issues when I was working at the City Hall. We were working in tandem with the builders that was strengthening the foundations. And, I mean, most of the building is 18th century or and up to early or mid 20th century. Everything is very, very during asbestos heyday. So we had to be so careful when digging through the floors, because if we saw anything that seemed like asbestos, it was basically just people being like, okay, well, we're gonna close down this room for, a couple of days while we get the sanitation team in here, and I hope you have another hole to dig in somewhere else in the building in the meantime, because, well, this is gonna take a while.
Well, but
and they had to do.
So go on.
They did sanitation while we were working.
Wow. Did you get breathing masks or anything along those lines?
Yeah, we had those.
Yeah.
And also, like, we had always like a builder on site with us when we were doing our trenches. That kept like specifically an eye out for hazardous materials because we had a lot of diesel in the ground as well.
Diesel.
Yeah.
Right. What, sort of soaked into the ground? Or?
Yeah.
Right. Blimey.
So that was interesting. It's always fun digging in a city landscape.
Well, but in that sense, I mean, how would you even begin to define what sort of hazards you might come across in a place like this? In so much as you say, like a post-industrial landscape, you might have hazardous materials and chemicals, all this sort of stuff. Here you've got God only knows what's happened here, and goodness knows what. So they have pottery, they have some weird electricity, they probably have, definitely have goop that they're dropping people into, and goop that they stick people to. Who knows what the hazards might.
Goop that preserves these bodies in a fairly good shape for like thousands and thousands of years. That's probably not healthy.
No.
Probably not good for your skin.
I mean, that doesn't look very good at all for your skin. No. Although speaking of which, I was once, well, two things. I once had a mild arsenic poisoning, and also I once did just randomly pick up some arsenic, some asbestos on the floor. I was looking around an old prisoner of war camp with my buddy Chris Blanco.
Vision time.
Yes, more memories.
It is depicted here, our gateway out of this world. These reliefs clearly portray ancient Conarium, the thing I have been searching for my whole life. As much as I can understand, that one depicts a seemingly dead city as an ever-living organism with lots of mummified bodies connected to the device.
So the mummified bodies are connected to the...
And the other one depicts an ancient Conarium which is connected to another one, most probably outside of this planet or maybe out of this dimension. My, this is just marvelous.
Now I have to say, he's making some leaps of logic there. How does he know that this depicts another two devices connected outside, possibly their own one dimension to another? That's quite a leap of reasoning. But again, we're talking early to mid 20th century science, so
you also have to remember that he doesn't do like any kind of documentation, so he could have seen or found out something before that he just hasn't documented.
Oh yeah, well, that's true. And of course, playing the game with amnesia, maybe that's it. Maybe the thing is, maybe we as players are just bad because he was meticulous before the amnesia. I was recording everything. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, just because you can't remember recording it, that's why we're just running through this time.
Now, we're about to have a section where I might die a couple of times, but it's fine. But just beyond that,
I look forward to being the one that's not dying.
Yeah, you get to laugh at me as I panic. But there's a couple of things I want to show you beyond this section, so hopefully we won't die too much, and you'll be able to see those. So let's see. Basically, the mummies are going to come to life and chase us. Yay! And the thing is, you can't hear the music, you can't hear the sounds, you can't hear the shum, shum thing that's about to happen to me. So the spirit of a thing with squid-like feet is waking up. Oh crap! Run away! Run away! I don't like it. Oh, I don't like it at all. Run! Come on! Run up! Oh no! Okay.
dead.
Yeah, you got me.
But yes, I imagine it's very scary with all the sounds.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, all you can hear is me just going, no, ah! To you, it just sounds like someone's suddenly got very painful constipation or something. Okay.
But I must say, I like how they have like made the visions when everything goes like squiggly and pixely.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it is good. I was going to say also, before this happened, I quite like the subtle way that things start to go wibbly and wobbly as you're approaching it as well. So you get a sort of a cue of disquiet. Now I think. Oh no, the music's still going. Okay, I'm just gonna. Okay, the music stopped for a second. That's good. I can sort of, because there's no obvious stamina bar, but it's clear that Frank can only run so far for so fast for so far. Oh no! I can hear them. Run! And we just need to get down this corridor. They're all popping off the walls, but we'll be fine. This way. Oh no, the door's closed. Oh dear. It's not very nice. Run! Ah! And then, we're okay.
Good. Good job.
Thank you.
These must be the products of my disordered imagination, and nothing more.
I wouldn't say nothing more. But, and look now, those red bodies have been replaced by... So something is happening. Ugh. Or maybe...
I mean, that's something I would comment on.
You mean
The
it...
bodies in the blue goo suddenly became other bodies in goo.
Yeah, exactly. It's, that's definitely worth an observation or two, isn't it? But now we get to charge our pods, yay!
Yay!
I have to say, if I had time, I would make one of those if I was going on a costume party. That'd be an amazing light my way accessory at night. Someone would have to be really weird to mug you. So yeah. So here we have. This is pretty cool. This is basically a living, well, not a living. Sorry, this is a real world version of the mural that we saw earlier with the lizard-like folk lining up to worship one of the elder things with the barrel body and the wings and the star-shaped head. It's a curious thing, but it's interesting that such iconography has come out of such deliberately vague and bizarre things. An ancient musical instrument with elaborate ornaments that are reptilian in nature, it still looks playable. But things like descriptions like it was reptilian have led to very visceral and visible sort of art styles that you can see all over the place. And this is something we have talked briefly about, but I mean, I think it's worthwhile touching on. What's your take on the relationship between the man, the author, and his fiction?
I mean, I have a strained relationship with the man. I mean, obviously he was a bit of an ass.
Yeah, he definitely had some serious personal problems as well.
And not very nice ideas about people.
No.
But I think that he's inspired a lot of good fiction. And I mean, I try to enjoy it despite it, because like I enjoy most of his writings. But yeah, it's complicated.
It is complicated. It is, and I think it's weird, isn't it? Because if he hadn't been successful, I would be less inclined, I think, probably, to see those places in his life where there was transformation. So when it became clear that he travelled more, he seemingly became a little more tolerant of people and others, for example. But the issue, one of the issues though, is that often the people who in his stories who associate with these lizard folk and the elder things are basically not European, and certainly, and your trustworthy person will be called Johansson and will be from Norway or something. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? And it's something that I guess is part of the work.
Yeah.
It is present.
And also, I mean, I think there's a lot of new fiction inspired by Lovecraft that doesn't have that issue.
No.
Which is much nicer to read.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to be like, oh, every other page.
Do you think that you would want to even try and tackle it with the author or not? Or do you think it's one of those things where he would be so of his time and stuck in his ways that it's just not even worth going into with him? Like if you know.
I mean, he did. From what I've read about him, he doesn't seem to be the most willing listener.
No. So I suppose. Oh, come on, let me through. They won't let me through the plants. I suppose in that sense, it's a life lesson, though, isn't it? Try not to be that.
Try not to be an asshole, people.
Indeed, we can but try. Now then, let me see. So yeah, so all in all, I think what we've got is a city that was occupied by elder things, later occupied by lizard people, and now it has an incursion of humans into it. I suppose the final thing that I would like to consider with you is this question of what do they call it? It's well, it's called appropriation, but I don't mean that in the sort of the cultural appropriation kind of way. But this idea that monuments and places can take on new meaning with new occupants. Do you think that this sort of space could ever become a legitimate human living space? If you know what I mean. I know that's a slightly weird thing to contemplate, but do you think people could ever live in this sort of place?
I mean, I imagine they would. Humans are notorious for living anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems habitable enough. We haven't died of anything just yet.
No, exactly. Yeah, that's
and
true.
With the mummy problem cleared, I think we would be good to go.
You know, I would simply would love for you to be part of my New World Order government as a spokesperson. The mummy problem.
Don't know if anybody reads this, or if there is anyone still alive out there. I've lost everybody who was on my search party. I am alone and afraid.
Yes, that radio looks almost 1970s, doesn't
From
it?
the outer space echoes of my own footsteps that are reverberating along these halls of ages-long silence. It is hard to tell if I am alive anymore. Those visions, sounds, the devilish scenes described in the release I come across every now and then. We were not meant to be here.
Dr. Faust! Dr. Faust, are you there? Answer me, please!
And I promise you, I didn't plan it that way, but that actually is quite a good answer that the game gives to that question. You know, this idea of whether or not people are meant to be here or can be here, because the Dr. Faust there seems to be convinced that people aren't meant to be treading here. It's meant to be left alone. but I suppose yeah, I will bring our time to a close here. 'Cause also, I'm aware that you possibly want to play this game yourself. I don't
Yes.
want to spoil it for you too much. But so I'll stop literally here, and I'm not going to go any closer because you'll see something that's a bit spoiler if I go any closer.
Okay.
What do you think though, as a in this sort of Halloween but also archaeological kind of mashup? Do you think that actually that there are, or that it's a legitimate thing to suggest that there are places and spaces and ideas that archaeologists shouldn't meddle in, or that scientists shouldn't be aware of?
No.
No. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, yeah. And even if that means that I end up being one of those red shirt scientists on Star Trek,
That's fine.
it's
That's
fine. It's all in the name of
I'll
science.
live for my red shirt.
So it's been a bit weird. It's been a bit spooky, but ultimately, you would still be exploring this place. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Me too. Me too. Well, thank you for joining me, Liv. Incidentally, for people at home, we've had a couple of stabs at doing this recording for you because we wanted to try and get the tone right. And this evening, I think it's been quite good fun. Do you think that that Halloween next year will? Well, actually, can you think of any good games that you might want to share with me next year?
Yeah. I've been thinking on like taking a stab on the more like current kind of exploring games in the horror genre, like Outlast or something like that.
Oh, blimey! Yes, you can play that. I've seen the trailers for that. No. I could scarcely stand being chased by a lizard man. Never mind cultish rednecks. No. And I have a whole year to get ready for it. That's the best part.
Yay! Maybe I'll find something else for us.
Okay. Well, heck, we can even try maybe a couple of games.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, bloody Outlast. I'm trying not to swear. Yeah. Well, that'll be fun. Yay!
Yes.
But nonetheless, hopefully you guys at home have had a bit of fun watching and listening to this. And I guess all that remains to be said is Happy Halloween, everyone.
Stay spooky.
Indeed.
But not creepy.
Indeed. Goodbye.
Bye.